Worst dates I've ever been on. So it was 10 p.m. I'd just taken a chemistry test. This guy from my chem class, he had asked me if I would go eat dinner with him earlier that week. And before we went out, I asked him, is it a date? Because I'm not romantically attracted to you and I don't want to go on a date. And he said, psh, what? No, it's not a date. It's not a date. He said that it was a night of religious appreciation for him. And I'm not particularly religious, so I didn't know what that meant. And he said that that meant that he would go out, give himself a rest, and thank God for everything that he has and everything that he will have, because he's very ambitious. He's going to be a billionaire. He's going to meet Joe Biden by the end of the year. And I was like, okay, fine, you know, we can go out to eat. So he picks me up for our not date, and he's in a African suit, which I don't care, you know, drip is drip, but we're in the middle of a moderately rural area, and it's St. Patrick's Day, and people are out, and people are extremely drunk, and people can be really rude when they're really drunk, and they've never seen an outfit like what he was wearing. It was black velvet with like gold embellishments and these black velvet shoes covered in gold spikes. I was in jeans and a t-shirt and also a winter coat because it was 42 degrees out and really windy, and he wasn't wearing any kind of coat at all. So we go to the chicken tender place. It was one of the only places open this late. Everyone's staring at him. I don't think he noticed or cared, which is something I can respect. So we get there, and I sit down, and he goes, no. And he makes me stand back up so he can pull out my chair for me and push it back in. And then he explains, like, you know, my mother taught me, you know, manners, and, you know, you will not be doing that in my presence. He did the same thing for me with doors. Like, if I opened a door for myself, he would get mad at me, which I thought was super weird because I walked faster than him, and if he wanted to get the door so bad, he could have run to get it for me, but he didn't. So, you know, sucks to suck. Sounds like a fucking skill issue to me. I opened the door for us, whatever. Anyway, we sit down, and he kind of steeples his hands. I feel like I'm at an interview, and he goes, I know you must have a lot of questions for me, so, you know, you can ask. I kind of blink once. I was like, what? You asked me to come out, but I'm not smart, so I was like, okay, and so I talk to him about himself for the next 3 hours, is what it felt like. I have no idea what the actual time frame of that was, but we just talked about him. He explained the entire lore of his previous relationship, showed me pictures of his ex-girlfriend, individual stories of them, like, going out to eat, of him getting on his knees and apologizing to her when he angered her. What? And, like, talked about his mom, who he has, like, almost a husband relationship with. And when he wasn't talking about himself, he was criticizing me. He made fun of me for the way that I dressed. He would say, like, you came into class the other day, you looked so sexy. All the girls were jealous. And I never was super into those compliments. And then he said, but today you came in, and I was like, what, girl, what is she wearing? And I was like, fuck you, asshole, I really like that outfit. I like wearing platform Crocs. I made this shirt, it looks good. Whatever. It's called participating in an alternative subculture, you fuck. Then he'd go into detail about why he was so fashionable and how all of his friends came to him for fashion advice, and they would go out and be like, you have to tell me how to look, and he'd go, well, I am so sexy, of course. Shut the fuck up! He was one of those billionaire grindset guy boss types, and he loved to tell me how everything I was doing was wrong, and how he was working harder than everyone else, and he was gonna be God and have $1 billion, and he was so cool and sexy, and how I should be his mother wife. He would talk about how long he would study, hours, hours and hours. And I'd be like, oh, I only studied for 2 hours. And he would go, that's the problem with you. You need to study for 6 hours for these classes. You are not doing enough. He would make fun of the way that I talked and then say that he liked it. When I talk, I use a lot of ums and pauses and stuff and I'm sure you've noticed by now. Sometimes I edit them out because I do it too much. And so he said, you're always like, and then I was like, and then, he said, you know, like, that's how you talk. And I wanted to hit him. I was like, that's kind of rude. I did not like that. He made fun of my teeth. And he did that shit the whole time. And then he had the audacity to say, he said, you're so insecure. You should stop being so insecure. You should be like me. And he would do that all the time. He would insult me, say I should be more like him, and then explain why he was so great. That was every conversation I had with him, was him telling me why my worldview was wrong and why I should be more like him. And then he'd tell a story where he was like the victor. And when I had an opinion on something, he would explain why it was wrong. Like he told me that CEOs are, at the position that they're at and given as much money as they are because they're more morally and spiritually powerful than their employees, and that's why they're in charge. And I was like, really? He was like, yes. And I said, I disagree. I think, it's probably sometimes people are kind of born into that position, or they get it through connections and maybe not necessarily through being super qualified. He was like, no, you're not listening to me. And then he said his same point again, and I just genuinely thought that, like, I didn't say my point well enough. So I was like, yeah, no, I get that, and then I explained my point again, and he got mad. He actually held up his hand to silence me in the middle of conversation and said, no, listen to me, and then said it again. And I just, at that point I realized that I was talking to someone I would never be speaking to again. So I said, okay, sure, whatever. I just kind of let him keep talking and waited for the evening to end, essentially. And he did all of this and more on our not date. Literally, he just sat there and talked about himself and berated me until drunk girls took our food. This is the guy who said he didn't see me as academic competition, by the way, so why I agreed to this, I don't know. Yeah, so we're walking back from the restaurant. I'm bored, and he's cold because it is cold and windy out. Everyone who's outside is fucking smashed out of their minds. They're in the streets, they're screaming and throwing up and yelling, and it's a small town, so, everyone's out. And he insists that he knows the way back, even though I know the area way better than him. I actually leave the fucking dorm every once in a while, and I hang out around here. So, he's walking me the wrong way, and I'm like, I think it's that way, and he's like, no. So he leads us the wrong way for a while, and I go, oh, I think we walked past that on the way here, and he goes, yeah, and then we go that way, and he starts just shit-talking people we're walking past, explaining that, they're filth and immoral for their life choices, and, getting so drunk you're laying in the street is not great, but, I don't think it makes you a bad person. I tried to say that. He goes, no. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. I just want to go home now. I just want to go back to my room and go to bed. And so as we're walking back, he is wearing something that no one from this area has ever seen before. And some drunk frat guys start following us. And I think they wanted to say something, but they didn't. And I think that's because I was with him, and I'm, like, less hate crime shaped than he is. So, nothing happened, but that date sucked. That date sucked a lot. This guy was a piece of work. I did not like him. And I wanted this video to, stay kind of lighthearted, but, just in case you're still on this guy's side, after this, I never went out to eat with him again. But he'd continue to ask me out, and the last time I saw him, he was asking me out, and I said no, and for 2 hours he followed me around, just kind of asking over and over again. He actually like followed me into my dorm after I told him not to and stayed like 45 minutes, like just sitting there looking at me, asking me over and over again. And when I kept saying no, he just kind of kept getting angrier. He literally like grabbed me, held my hands, grabbed my face, touched my hair and shit, you know, all after explicitly I told him not to do that kind of stuff. Just over and over again being like, you know, if you think I would be a good man for you, you have to go on a date with me. So, like, you know, this is an asshole. This is a dangerous person. So, you know, it was bad. It was not good. So, I just want to say, you know, if anyone's ever making you uncomfortable, you have full permission to leave whenever the fuck you want. You know, you don't have to humor these people. You don't owe anybody shit. And if you get bad vibes from someone, that is enough not to be around them anymore. So, you know, but you don't owe people shit. So keep that in mind. I didn't owe him shit. Date number 2. This one is also technically not a date. So, you know, clickbait title. I was in high school. My best friend from high school was male. And I'm female, so, you know, we were eating at a restaurant together, and, you know, can I make it any more obvious? The waiter was like, "Is this a date?" And I was like, "Ha ha ha, no." And he goes, "All right, no, all right." And I want to die already, because I kind of wish waiters were tablets that I could order my food on. Not because I have anything against, like, waitstaff. That would just make things easier for me because I don't have to, like, do the whole interacting with them thing. I have no beef with them. I always tip really well. But anyway, so he makes everything worse. And he asks us, you know, if we want to order anything. And I said, it was like, "Oh, we're going to get wings to share. And then, you know, get something later. Wings as appetizers." And he goes, "Okay, bone in or boneless?" And I say bone in at the same time the guy I'm with goes, boneless. And then we both look at each other, and the waiter looks between us, and my guy friend, you know, smiles at me, puts his hand up, kind of nods, turns and looks at the waiter and nods at him, says, "Boneless." The waiter goes, "You didn't just do that." And then he starts explaining to him that when you're on a date with a girl, which I tried to remind him that we're not, and he shushed me, and he's like, you know, when you're on a date with a girl, whatever she says goes. You know, if she says the sky is green, it's green. If she says she wants bone-in wings, you get bone-in wings. So we got bone-in wings in the sauce that I wanted. And I don't really remember much else from that, except he talked about himself the whole time, and, you know, I'm starting to notice a pattern. Shit. Fuck, this is a pattern, isn't it? Damn. That sucks. Anyway, date number 3. This was actually one of the first dates I ever went on, so that's cool. Actually, this might have been my first date. And it was called a date, and it was a date. We had arranged it beforehand, talked to each other over the phone, texted each other for about a week, and this guy was really excited, and I was willing to get to know him. You know, it was fine. Unfortunately, the date was orchestrated by the best friend from the previous story. And the night before the date, he called me and said that he'd kill himself if I dated his friend. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Uh-oh." If I'd actually liked his friend, I would have told him that he was being ridiculous, you know, and told him to shove off. But, you know, we'd been talking for like a week. It wasn't life or death for me, so if I could do it over again, I'd do it differently. But I was like, all right, fine, you know, I won't date him. So I went into the date knowing I'd never see him again, which is a weird energy to bring to a dinner where the other person is really fucking jazzed to see you. So we actually had fun. He brought me to his dad's country club, which was really nice. I almost killed us driving around in go-karts, and he let me talk about serial killers. It was unfortunately like the kind of date where you're talking and the other person doesn't give a shit what you're saying at all. They're just kind of waiting for you to stop talking so they can like vigorously agree with you or say whatever the next thing to make you like them more is. So that sucked a little bit. But, you know, I made the mistake of, you know, sitting him down and saying, you know, this was fun, but, you know, I don't think we should do this again. I should have, done that later, but this was my first date. I didn't know. I was just trying to be nice. So, he was devastated, as any man should be if I turned him down. So we're going back to the car. I use the bathroom. I come back. I see he's on the phone. And I'm like, okay. But as I get closer, it's on speaker, and it's my friend from the previous date. And he says, I can't stand in the way of true love. If you guys need to be together, so be it. And my date looks up at me, and he's like, eh? And I'm so fucking pissed. I'm so mad. So I get in the car, he takes me home. That sucked. I didn't go on another date with him. The friend who orchestrated it actually told the guy I went on a date with that I hated him and that I hated the date, and at least I got a free meal out of it, and that I thought he was disgusting and scary. This guy was on the football team. He was really hurt by hearing that, obviously, as anyone would. And I don't imagine he had anything nice to say about me to other people for the next 2-3 years. It actually became an inside joke between the two of them that at least I got a free meal line. And I found out about this because I was on the phone with that original friend, and he was there at the same time, and the guy, my date, loudly went, at least I got a free meal, and I didn't get it. I was like, what? And he's like, at least I got a free meal. And I was like, what are you saying? And he's like, you said that about our date. And I was like, what? No, I didn't, because it's been like 2 years at this point. And that's where it all came out, that it was all a lie. And he had hated me for the past few years. And I'd seen him glaring at me in the hallways a few times, and I'd always wave and smile, and he'd and it all made sense. It all made sense after that, so that was nice. Good times. Good times. And even after all that, I never told my date the reason I never saw him again was because of his best friend. Because I'm not a piece of shit. I wasn't gonna do that to them. I mean, could you imagine if your best friend set you up on a date with this girl, the most beautiful, funny, hilarious, witty, smart, creative, gorgeous goddess person, and then she says no on your date, and then you get a shot with her later and she still says no, and then you find out she says no because the friend who set you up made her. Could you imagine? And they're still friends. They still hang out today. So I'm not gonna fuck that up. Whatever, just another bad date for me. Yikes. I just remembered another one, actually. It wasn't really a date. It wasn't called that. But he was a boy and I was a girl. Can I make it any more obvious? And we were walking around a lake. I wore heels because I was nervous. And I had these high-heeled combat boots that make me feel less nervous, or they did at the time. So I basically did a hike, a full day's worth of walking several miles in heels on gravel while being talked down to about a genre of music that I love. Whatever, it was a thing. He was a metalhead, they do that. So we were walking around, and I remember we were trying to find stuff in common. We were talking, and we started talking about movies. And I thought I would mention the worst movie I had ever seen, because I'd watched it recently. I told him it was so long, hours longer than it needed to be, and it was so boring, and none of the camera work made any sense, and I found it really pretentious and dull and soul-sucking, and I couldn't even remember what it was about. And he was so excited, and he was like, what movie is it? And I was like, have you seen Once Upon a Time in the West? And this poor boy who wanted more than anything for me to like him, for more than anything was looking for my approval. I watched his heart shatter behind his eyes, and it kind of bled into the rest of his face, which was smiling, grimacing really, at me. I can still see it so perfectly. He was crushed. Because of course, Once Upon a Time in the West is his favorite movie, and I just violently shit on it right in front of him. And he's a film major now, but that really just kind of set the tone for the rest of our date, which went pretty good. So, did he spend the whole time talking about himself, his interests, why my interests were stupid, why I didn't actually know anything about what I was talking about? Yes, he did. Do I see a pattern now in the people who spend time with me? Yes, I do. Fuck.